I am here to talk to you about Introductory to Psychology. It's one of the classes that we teach as sort of a staple at the community college level. In this course, we study psychology, which is the study of behaviors and mental processes using the scientific method. So when we provide the survey course, which is a little bit of information from all the different areas of psychology to students, I stress the scientific method at the beginning of the semester, and I want to make sure that students know the difference between the different scientific methodologies, between experiments, correlations, etc., in terms of what we study, how we study it, so that they're prepared for the rest of the semester. Once I feel like they have a good grasp of looking at the scientific method, then we move on into looking at sort of the history of psychology, where we started from and where we are now. And then we really get into some of the theories, some little snippets of different theories in the subject. And so I start out with a chapter called Cognition, and we take a look at the way we think. We look at the basics of thought, we look at how that transforms in a complex cognition, like problem solving and things like that. And I give them that chapter so that we can prepare them for the memory chapter. And we need to talk about how memories form and how to improve memories. This is an important thing in life, but also obviously for their college class. From there, we start looking at the learning chapters, and so we look at the different ways that we learn and the different processes and methodologies so that they can tell the difference between, say, classical and operant conditioning and social learning, to make sure that they understand the different ways that we learn. Once I feel like they sort of somewhat understand how we learn, we can talk about what that means in terms of society. So we look at social psychology, talk about how society even helps us go through some of these different learning processes, and how different societies might lead us to learn different things, and how society sort of reinforces or punishes different behaviors that we try. Once I feel like they start to understand how society influences us, I really try to get them to understand that biology also can make a difference. And so we look at the biological basis of behavior, and we talk about the nervous system. We talk about at the neuron level how a neuron communicates, and really how that biological level allows us to engage in some behaviors, or sometimes prevents us from doing certain behaviors. And so we really look at mapping out the brain and what scientists have learned, what different parts of the brain are responsible for different tasks. And then part of that biological aspect is our senses. For our brain to get information, we need to gather it from the world around us. So we look at sensation and perception, trying to figure out how the senses get information to the brain, and then how the brain interprets it, and what types of things can impact that. From that point in the semester, we start to compile different theories together. So we'll look at a developmental chapter, and how does, say, biology change? How does physical things change as we get older? How does cognition change in terms of our thought processes change as we get older? And so we start to look at the developmental aspects of those theories we've already talked about. How do they change over the lifespan? And then we get into things like personality, and how does our personality in particular develop, and how is that impacted by different events that happen throughout our life. And then we'll get into what happens if that personality is pretty extreme, or other issues and behaviors that we've talked about become extreme. And so what is abnormal behavior, and what's the difference between somebody who's just being a little bit unique and an individual versus the person who maybe needs the label of having some sort of a psychological disorder. And if they have the label, then how do we help them? What kind of therapy is out there, and what kind of therapies can we give them to make sure that they can improve their overall well-being to be better, more productive members of society? And we sort of wrap up the semester in terms of trying to put it all together and really understand how that impacts them individually, and that usually brings us to the end of the semester.